brand partner is the flagship steel company of the Philippines, serving the country with over 2.4 million tons of rebar per year. With their commitment to preserve the environment, SteelAsia is the first in the Philippine steel industry to be certified in accordance with ISO 14001, the International Standard for Environmental Management Systems. So, to tell us about how green steel supports industrialization of the Philippines, we are joined by a passionate advocate for green steel and green technologies in general. So, I know this is kind of a lot of very technical terms, no? So, are anybody here engineers, architects? Thank you, sir. For the rest, what are the most of the courses? What do we have? Yeah, just go shout it out. Pharmacy, pol sci. Okay, so education. Oh, very proud. Education. Okay. Oh, daming education sa likod. All right, but our speaker is going to be here to help us understand what these initiatives are, what is green steel and green technologies. So he was a board member in the Thailand Press-Stressed Wire Industry Association and the Waste Management and Recycling Association of Singapore. So together with SteelAsia's community partner representative, let us welcome their Chief Technology Officer and Green Steel Advocate, Mr. Pek Hoong Chong.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting SteelAsia to share our story with everyone here. This is also my first time at the NU Manila campus, and it's very interesting to see the young people full of energy and cheering the way for sustainability of the world. Okay, SteelAsia is actually a very focused company in terms of our business. We are almost, you can describe as a single product company, that's steel. But today I'd like to share with you how steel can really support the country's development. Yeah, and of course we are not as diverse as SM, yeah, but steel in our own way is really essential for every growing economy. Next slide, please. Okay, the Philippines is actually in an era of high economic growth. In ASEAN, we are typically the fastest growing or the second fastest growing economies for the last 10 years or so, together with Vietnam, the two fastest growing ASEAN countries. And what does it mean by fast growing economy? We are looking at very strong growing demand, yeah, for housing and infrastructure, for jobs creation. So essentially, the economy needs to continue growing to create jobs for the growing population. And steel is really essential in many ways that is not obvious to everyone. But with economic growth, with urbanization, building homes, building cities, with industrialization, building factories that create jobs, building supply chains, all these use a lot of steel. And today, climate change and ESG actually influence how steel is going to be produced to meet the requirements of the country. And I'll explain to you why. Of course, ESG, we typically, is what people referring to, environment, social, governance. In the past, this is seen as something that's good to have, but you will realize that in the corporate world today, it is an essential part. Every organization is expected to have its own ESG focus on how it can grow sustainability, and it's not just grow. Next slide, please. Now, about industrialization. Steel is one of the key essential pillar of industrialization. And in industrialization, infrastructure is also supported. Manufacturing continues to grow, and industrialization also needs energy transportation to support. And how supply chain in a country, especially an archipelagic country like the Philippines, need to have good connectivity for logistics. You will realize that steel is actually quite essential in every of these economic pillars. and we cannot really avoid using steel. There are always innovators who try to use new materials, but still, unfortunately, there's something we can't avoid because it is really an economical material that can support so much of the growth that every country needs. Well, technically, a country can import all the steel it needs to grow, but without a domestic steel, you will realize that industrialization will be slow, it will be expensive, we will depend on imports from the global market, which can mean, let's say, supply chain disruption at any time, and which can also mean loss of job creation for the Filipinos. Because today, the Philippines actually imports more than 80% of its steel requirements. We are growing so fast, but so much of the jobs in making steel are actually overseas. And if Philippines can actually make more steel, we actually can retain many of our Filipino talents in the country and create so many more jobs. And I will share with you in the next few slides how it actually happens. Next slide, please. Coming back to climate change. So steel belongs to this unenviable category of hard to abate sector. Some of you may have heard this term. So globally, the United Nations have set a target to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. So we are 25 years away from there. Every year, there is actually a climate conference, like currently it's happening in Brazil right now, to find ways to accelerate this process because the world is actually in danger of missing the target. Unfortunately, there is this category of material called hard to abate sector: steel, cement, plastics, heavy transportation. So this category of um, activities happen to be very essential to mankind, to our growth, to our development, but extremely difficult to decarbonize. So this becomes a bottleneck because if you are to reach net zero, and we cannot decarbonize the hard to abate sector, it will actually cause us to miss the target. Missing the target means a lot more climate disasters coming in the future years. It is something that is bad for everyone in the world. Next slide, please. So what is it about this hard to abate sector? Let me share with you about traditional steelmaking, which I won't go into very detail. Traditional steelmaking uses iron ore mined from the ground and coal also mined from the ground. And many of you would know coal generates a lot of CO2. And this is the way most of the world's steel is being made today. Next. There is also another way to make steel, and this is already called the green steel. And you will notice in the picture on the slide, you see a lot of renewable energy. So renewable energy is essential. You also see scrap recycling, and you see heat recovery. So these are, I wouldn't say the latest technology, but these are actually proven technologies which are already mostly tested. Some commercial operations have already taken place. And these are the alternative technologies without the use of coal to make very low CO2 emission steel, and generally called green steel. So this world, there are these two ways of steel making, but most of the steel in the world is made using the traditional way. Next slide, please. Many of you may not know, in the Philippines, we have one of the world's greenest steel plant. And it is actually in Batangas province. It's operated by SteelAsia Calacao Works. Compared to traditional steelmaking, SteelAsia Calacao Works in the Philippines actually produces steel with nearly 90% lower CO2 emission. So what we are doing actually is one of the very important solutions to tackle the hard-to-abate sector the world is facing. Next. Because steel is such a key input to many industries, contributing also significantly to a circular economy, so it is unavoidable that the country needs to use more steel as we grow, as we develop. But what can be done is then how do we ensure that our growth is sustainable? And green steel is one of the answers. You'll see on the left side that if we have our own steel, they can actually contribute, of course, significantly to building and infrastructure development. But not only that, it also contributes to equipment manufacturing industries, which the Philippines does not have a big one. We can also grow the automotive industry should the government and the private sector work together to make this grow. Appliances industry, imagine making washing machines and televisions and all the other household appliances in the Philippines itself. Metal products, yeah, imagine the Philippines making other machines, manufacturing equipment and exporting them, as well as other transportation. So you will realize that many industries actually need to make use of steel to make the final products. And steel also happens to be one of those infinitely recyclable material. So being part of a circular economy, we actually do not, once steel enters the value chain, it doesn't go away. Even at the end of life of any machine, any car, yeah, any construction material that we demolish, we can actually recycle that. That is what we mean by infinitely recyclable material. So steel has this unique feature, and we should take a full advantage of that when we develop the economy, how to find ways to make the steel sustainable. Next slide, please. So SteelAsia, in our own way, is trying to contribute to this sustainable development in the country, to promote industrialization through the green steel. We are already today the largest steel company in the Philippines, but as I said, the Philippines still import more than 80% of the steel it needs. Today, SteelAsia makes only rebars, but it's not just SteelAsia. The whole Philippines, our tiny steel industry only makes rebars. But SteelAsia has a vision to expand into products that the Philippines is importing a lot today, including construction steel, like the channels, the angles, the steel beams, the sheet piles, and also industrial materials like the wire rods. And all this going into the infrastructure and construction industry of the country. Next, please. So SteelAsia is a 60-year-old company, and we have been growing over the years, contributing to the growth of the industry, and we do it in a very environmentally responsible way. Our vision is to lead the development of the Philippine steel industry, because steel is really essential in any growing economy. Next. So our growth strategies can be broken down into three parts. Making steel in the Philippines. We are not a steel trading company. All the steel that we sell are made in the country. And not only are we continuing to do that, we want to expand ourselves, make more steel in the Philippines so that the country relies less on imports. We are also making new steel products, pioneering the manufacturing in the country where we currently import so much. And in doing all that, we are choosing to do it the environmentally friendly way, which is to make green steel. In fact, I will explain later about how our expansion plans is actually one of Asia's largest green steel development, and right here in the Philippines, which is very impressive even for our neighboring countries and abroad, which is why we have been invited to share our green steel story to many countries around the region. And even in, let's say, yeah, in Southeast Asia, in Japan, we have been cheered upon and we have been supported in many ways on how we are helping to champion the green steel development, in the whole region. All this development actually can help the Philippines to save $2 billion of foreign exchange. Yeah, this is a big support for the trade deficit reduction, almost 4% of the country's trade deficit. Our growth is also going to create jobs. So, as I shared with you, industrialization is not just about making more companies, but it's also about creating jobs in the country. If steel is made in a country, then jobs are created in a country. If a country depends on importing steel to support our construction and infrastructure, we are really talking about exporting the job creations to other countries. And what we do is also going to give more opportunities for SMEs and bringing industrialization and urbanization to the Philippine countryside. All our expansion are outside the metro areas because we believe that this is where the people are really hungry for the developments and able to support our industrial growth. Next, please. So this is like a case study on how circular economy works. SteelAsia actually has partnership with like-minded customers, Ayala Group and Metro Pacific Group. The two companies have entered into partnership with SteelAsia to promote sustainable construction and circular economy. So how this works is that in their businesses, all the scrap generated is, instead of sending it to a regular scrap recycling company, they are sent to SteelAsia to ensure that these scrap are recycled in the country. And SteelAsia is able to produce green steel out of the scrap received. And the green steel goes back to the same company, Ayala and Metro Pacific, because these companies also construct a lot of buildings, residential, commercial infrastructure, and hence the circular economy is actually live. And we continue to explore such partnership with other like-minded customers because we believe it is a true essence on how steel circular economy partnership should work. Next, please. As I mentioned, SteelAsia Kalaka Works remains as one of the lowest and the greenest steel plant in the world, and we will continue to replicate this in our expansion. And our CO2 numbers being 90% lower than traditional steelmaking is actually verified by DNV of Norway. Next. So we are not resting with only Kalaka Works. You can see on the right side of the screen, these are our current operating plants where we have one green steel plant in Kalaka. On the left side are our expansion plans. So all our expansion will go into new products and they will all be green steel with scrap recycling, and we will be maximizing the use of renewable energy, how we make green steel today. But we will be expanding our capacity significantly from the current 0.5 million tons of green steel to 3.5 million tons of green steel by 2029. Next. And with 3.5 million tons of green steel, it helps us avoid 7 million tons of CO2 per year. And that's equivalent to planting 200 million trees or removing 1.6 million gasoline vehicles or offsetting CO2 from 1.4 million homes. Next. So the expansion is not just a plan. In fact, construction is already ongoing. And you will see that this is a H-beam. Today, 100% of it is imported. And you can see that in buildings, in factories construction, in some infrastructure works. Next year, we will have the green steel H-beam made here in the Philippines, proudly by a Filipino company employing Filipino engineers, Filipino technicians. So coming very soon, and every year in the next few years, we will be having a new green steel plant. Next. Another new product, the I-beam. Next. Another new product, the green steel angles. And you can see that the telecommunication towers, the power transmission towers use a lot of this. Next. And this is another new green steel product that's also coming soon. Okay, next. With that, thank you for your attention. I hope you learned a little bit about green steel today and how we can contribute to the country's industrialization. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Ayun. Thank you very much, Mr. Chong.